Little trouble there. Okay. 5, 6, and. Not quite my tempo. Here we go. 5, 6, and. Not quite my tempo. It's all good. No worries. Here we go. 5, 6, 7. You're rushing. Here we go. 5, 6, and. Dragging just a hair. Wait for my cue. 5, 6, 7. Are you gonna be on my fucking time?
Pat Smith, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much for having me here.
And of course we have my co-host Henrik.
Still here, still to just plainly make you nervous.
And so,
Yeah,
yeah.
Karri, they are following you. They are looking at you. The whole world is just going to look at you now.
Oof, stage fright. We're gonna have a little bit of that today. So, Mr. Pat, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You are a musician, as it happens, which fits tonight's episode when we're talking about the movie Whiplash.
Yeah, sure. I'm 44 years old. I began with me dicking around music when I was 4 years old. You know, primary school, it's the recorder, the triangle, the tambourine. At 5 years old, I started playing the trumpet. I got to, I think, grade 6, maybe grade 7, if I remember correctly. And then stopped because I didn't want to do the whole Salvation Army thing that I was being pushed into. And then I picked up the guitar and I fell in love with music properly. Self-taught, and after playing for 38 years, and literally that instrument keeping me alive by living on the streets of Europe, I still pay attention to the greats across the board, not solely on guitar, but across the board in music. Simply because, as it is, you can give me any instrument and I can figure out, firstly, once I figure out how to play it, then I can put music together.
How long have you been out kind of on the streets, and like how serious has the situation been for you? Really just feeding yourself with the guitar at points?
Yeah, going through bins to look for food. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
I guess we have to touch on that wonderful piece of rock right now.
Gibraltar.
Yeah, Gibraltar.
Yeah, sure. Gibraltar.
That's where we...
Como español.
Right. It was like, at this point, almost exactly 10 years ago when we met there.
Christ, it is, isn't it? Yeah, it must be about that.
2013, November-ish? Yeah.
Yeah, wow, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, man, it's been a long time since you and I have known each other.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so anyway, we happened to have a kind of a good conversations going on there and just kept in touch. And
yeah, absolutely.
Discussing ever since. Drums. What's your touching point on drums?
Drums. Oh, well, the touching points I have on drums are the likes of John Bonham, Led Zeppelin, outstanding drummer. Far and away, for the time, he took it to another level completely. Now, since John Bonham, there have been some absolutely incredible drummers throughout the rock industry. The most notable of late, for me, would be Danny Carey, the drummer from Tool.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, I mean, he takes it to another level. And a whole different ball game with some of the stuff that he comes out with, from the melodies, the melodic side of it, to even getting on stage with 3 drum kits. each tuned to a different key.
I wouldn't understand such nuances, except I know what I like. I have ears still, as far as I know, and so
Yeah, sure.
Tool is what I gravitate towards many times. It's one of my favorite bands, yes, and I can easily listen to it just for the drums because it's that good.
Yeah. To go into the film Whiplash, which we're supposed to be discussing, the one thing that the majority of jazz musicians forget about is that it's not about the solo. It's the same in rock. Like you take Guns N' Roses, it's all about Slash. You take Metallica, and it's all about James Hetfield. You take, for example, the Chili Peppers, and predominantly it's about Flea on the bass. Now, this is outstanding because there's no question about it. These are outstanding musicians. But the one thing that is most often forgotten about in jazz is that it's not about the solo musician. It's about the sound that comes out of the speakers. It's the sound as a whole. It's a complete sound that comes out of the speakers. It's not about some solo person within the collective on stage. If you have 10 musicians on stage, 9 of them are shit, but you've got one great one, it doesn't make that a great band.
In the movie, it's depicted in a way that this is highly choreographed craft, and there is really no room for error, whereas in something like bluesy guitar stuff like what Slash does, errors are the kind of part and parcel of that show, whereas looks like for Fletcher it's not. But then he does encourage some improvisation also, some fills.
I would say to reference Fletcher in this, and to use this point, remember we're talking about somebody who can't. He's trying to teach, which means he can't, i.e. those who can't teach. Yeah, I mean we hear him, and it's very low level what he's playing on the piano. I mean I can learn what he's playing in less than a month, and I can't play the piano.
Okay, hey, let's discuss that. Fletcher playing the piano. Henrik, how does it come off to you? Because I thought it sounds kind of enjoyable, but at the same time, it's not something like... It's obviously not something that requires a high level of skill, right? The J.K. Simmons did learn that on piano with great effort. He's not a piano player, but he was able to kind of learn it. He does play some piano. So yeah, it doesn't seem like it was intentional for this film that we show a Fletcher who is not as, perhaps able musically as we would like to think of him as. It wasn't any kind of a revelation that, okay, he's not actually the kind of a badass that he shows off as being.
No, my take on the scene was that the movie tries to argue that Fletcher is some type of a badass jazz master.
Yeah.
And to me, the scene itself was trying to tell that what Fletcher is playing is some groundbreaking jazz. Everybody is there listening quietly. And there is even an ADR compliment given to Fletcher how great he was on piano. But in all honesty, I have to actually side with Pat here. Fletcher, what we hear in the film from Fletcher, it might be really great piano performance from J.K. Simmons, but coming from Fletcher, the character, it's nothing. It's fucking rubbish. It sounds nice, I give you that, but it's the exact same ding 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 that you hear in... It plays in background of every restaurant if they have some type of a soundtrack playing in there. It is the cue-in restaurant jazz album soundtrack of basically every honed-in scene of basically any movie.
So you're saying that it's the Starbucks album that he is talking about?
It is. Fletcher is playing
in a nutshell,
most milquetoast Starbucks-esque jazz possible in that scene.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I mean, don't get me wrong on this. For J.K. Simmons to have learned that and played that, that's a feat worth applauding,
Oh yeah,
because he's not a musician.
Right.
Yeah.
He's not a musician. So therefore, for him to be able to learn that and achieve that and accomplish that, very well done. Absolutely. I applaud that. But the character that he's portraying is supposed to be some diehard jazz musician who's lived his life by the nails, and has lived on the wire and done it all from birth and been brought up and done wow jazz. And if that's the summit of his accomplishments, well, I'd ask for my money back, to be honest, and I'd ask for the receipt to be given back so that I could purchase again.
Although I understand that J.K. Simmons was supposed to be a conductor somewhere in some point in his life, but then he chose something else, such as acting.
Yeah, but
Yep.
a conductor counts to 4 and waves his arms in time to that.
Yeah,
That's not to be derogatory, but that's what a conductor does.
That's
Right.
what Fletcher does in this film.
Yeah,
during
yeah,
those
yeah.
bloody contests where he's supposed to show off and flex off how great he is.
Regarding the conducting, Pat, I might throw this at you. So in terms of all the musical terms that he uses during the film and the signs, like, is there anything that jumped at you that was not correct?
Well, no, because it's all how a person would, regardless of the person, it's all about how any person would communicate. So we're talking about base level communication, trying to communicate their ideas across to other people for them to get the other people to do what that person wants them to do. So the terms used, yeah, maybe not. Maybe there is a guy over there that says it like that. Maybe there's another guy over there that says it differently, but they
Right.
mean the same thing. The connotations used, the terms used, yeah, maybe they are right, maybe they are wrong. Who knows? Because it's all on from a personal level. I mean, if I were to tell you how to record X podcast using X terms, and then some other guy from across the way comes and says, no, do it Y way and use Y terms to say so, but the end result is the same, it makes no difference which words are used to tell the person how to do it.
Right.
Do you see the point?
Yeah. Did you feel that Fletcher plays a role here? That he's not exactly himself when he's just showing off when he comes to the classroom at the right second?
Well, in that respect, you have to remember that the world of jazz is potentially the most pretentious and arrogant side of music in the world, and I don't say that lightly. If you look at where jazz comes from, it's the blues guitarist got bored, to put it in its most simple terms. And it really is. The blues guitarist playing 12-bar blues, 8-bar blues, E, A, E, A, E, A, D, E, A, E, A, E, A, D. He got bored. So then he puts the diminished sevenths, the suspended ninths, the suspended fourths in, the minor suspended sevenths, all of these different chords, and then put it all together, and you get the crazy licks that come through. Now, when it comes to Fletcher himself, and he's pushing for the kid to go faster on the drums, to play it in this time, that time, the other time, etc., etc. Now, that's all classic jazz drumming. However, what he's trying to do is achieve something that isn't achievable, simply because the vast majority of the jazz that they are playing in that film was written off the cuff. It was inspired then and there. There was nothing
Right.
written down. There were guidelines. But as long as they stayed within those guidelines, they could play anything within them and have the desired result.
Yeah, like,
And that's when they were written, remember. That's when they were originally designed or originally played. So the recordings that they're trying to emulate on this film are recordings of maybe live performances from 20, 30, 40 years ago.
yeah.
And they've never been played again by the people who wrote them, because they can't. The thing with the world of music is, don't get me wrong, take your Ed Sheerans. All right, take Ed Sheeran as an example. 110, maybe 150, maybe 120 beats a minute for his songs, and it's all A minor, C, F, G, and that's it. Those 4 chords, that's it. So that's easy to replicate, simple to replicate, time and time and time again. But when you're talking about when these guys who were doing this jazz, when it was first done, and they managed somehow to actually get snatch a recording of it, this isn't something that they were even aware they were playing half the time.
Right.
They didn't know that they were doing it, but it sounded amazing. And I've done it. I know there's a few people that have live recordings of me on stage when I've been jamming with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And to them, they're hearing this beautiful, amazing, ethereal, wonderful thing. They asked me what I played, and I couldn't tell them because I don't know. And it's that simple. I don't know what I was playing at that point in time. All I knew, that's that note, right? So that's there. Yeah, okay, we go from there, and just throw something together.
So in that sense, would you say that it's kind of perverse or pretentious to put it on the books how to play that music?
I don't think it's perverse or pretentious to put it on the books to play that music. I do, however, think it is highly pretentious to demand it from people you are trying to teach.
Well,
That actually was something that was really pissing me off too while watching the movie. Or not really, like, not meaning pissing me off in the sense that I thought that the movie was garbage, but pissing me off in the sense that I thought that Fletcher was complete garbage. Because coming from that point that jazz is, in large parts, it is improvisation. And jazz has led into even greater improvisational subcategories like scat singing, for example. Due to its improvisational nature. And it was like, I was almost pulling my hair out here, looking at Fletcher, who is and comes off as a badass jazz teacher. Emphasis on the word teacher, as someone who is supposed to teach these kids who are in a music academy, and he does not teach anything about improvisation, or feeling the music, or jumping into the beat, or anything about that. What he just teaches is how to play extremely fast and hit every note on time on sheets of paper. And I was like that's not teaching anything. You're turning a musician into a dictaphone, basically.
Basically, yes, absolutely.
Or is it teaching you the technicalities first, and when you have those technicalities in place, then you can improvise?
No,
it isn't. Simply because all he's doing is shouting at them. He's just shouting at him because he isn't able, or at that moment, he is able to do it. There's no question about that. The boy playing the drums, or the character playing the drums, should I say, has the ability to play it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in that school, in that room, being the person that this guy wants him to be.
Precisely. He's a music academic, which means that he already he at least knows the technicalities, how to play fucking drums.
Yes, exactly.
And he knows how to actually play drums well. That is how, in the opening of the film, he caught Fletcher's eye.
Yeah.
I would say that if you're in a general school, you're in a primary school, you don't need the kind of character that Fletcher is. No, definitely not. But when you start to specialize in something like music in this case, I feel that in our culture nowadays, everyone is on the honor roll, like I said to Pat, to kind of quote George Carlin on there. I think people need some different techniques than just good job. There should be somebody who is pushing you.
No, I agree with that completely. You know, there's an element of that, absolutely. However, what I will say to that is, had I been that drummer, had I been him and playing that and doing everything I could to do it, to achieve it, and I had that guy throw a chair at me, I'd have put his head through the fucking wall.
Yeah, that's extreme.
Done. Yeah, then, you know, you can't nurture talent, nurture skills by bullying.
Perhaps not, but maybe some level of bullying might be in order.
No, bullying is derogatory. Bullying brings people down. Bullying makes people, especially musicians or artists as a whole, it puts them inside their own shell and further stifles them.
I've noticed a larger kind of societal discussion that goes into how do we actually, how we train the greats, how do we get results. It has been going on for something like, I don't know, from the 60s of the sports scene, as far as I've been able to track it down. And it's a misunderstanding of a basic rule of getting better and basic rule of teaching. Like what Karri said is correct. Like there should be a challenge being presented to your students so that they can push against that challenge. Pushing
Yes,
against,
of course.
Pushing against some challenge actually helps you get better. Yeah,
But it's how to push.
Exactly, and how to present that bloody challenge.
Yes. Shouting and screaming because you're a fucking useless white guy that's just waving a magic wand in front of a bunch of musicians and having that guy throw things at you is not going to help the students learn.
Precisely. And it's not just a problem that I saw in Whiplash. It's a problem that I see constantly in different venues with the repeated results. The first time I actually noticed this one was in the sports scenes. It was NBA and basketball and all that jazz, where basically we had these coaches who were really extreme on their methods. One coach even choked a player during a game, and like these really extreme actions were taken. And all of them were kind of hand waved away by this magical notion that, well, he's a hard coach. He's strict, but he's fair. Blah, 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 blah. And
Yeah.
we need these tactics to get the best out of the players. And when those teams won the matches where they played, well, then the matches were used as a justification to the coach's tactics. Like, that coach had to choke a player on the play field. Otherwise, that team couldn't have won the game. And yeah, and what people failed to understand in those situations was that the team won despite of the coach, not because of the coach. The coach was some 300 pounds hippo who was physically incapable of playing the bloody game. He was he was incapable of leading by example. But yet, basically, every outreach that he made was hand-waved away simply because, despite of his best practices, the team still somehow managed to win games. And then you see this also in game development, where we have the bloody crunch culture. And the same song is once again being sang. The game development, the game teams, they have to take part in crunch in order to push out great games. And then you have something like Cyberpunk 2077. 6 months of crunch and the game is a broken mess. It takes 2 years for the team to actually patch it into a working order. And that's quite... It's the same bloody argument, once again. The same argument that Fletcher uses to shield himself from criticism and to justify his actions. And the end result is exactly the same. The kid can't play... Or he can't really play jazz, he can't just, play the notes he has memorized. The team can win, but they win despite the coach. And in game development, Cyberpunk 2077 launched as a broken mess.
Can I interject here on this? Because I agree with everything you're saying, but I want to reiterate the point that everything you've described is for a football team and a basketball team, a cricket team, and well, not a cricket team because a rugby team, for example. So you've got your coach on the sideline, he's screaming and shouting orders at a bunch of men who are pumped full of adrenaline. They are in an energetic, maybe even a violent. With rugby, for example, it's a violent game. So these guys are big. They are essentially warriors, and they are out there fighting for their country, their team, whatever, however you want to put it. So they are angry and pumped full of adrenaline. So having that same ethos applied to a band of musicians who are trying to create something wonderful from the speakers. Not them individually. It's the overall sound that comes out of the speakers that is important. So you can't apply this. Like I said, I agree with everything you've just said. You can't apply the same logic, the same tactics to a band of young musicians as you would apply to a football team, an American football team, a basketball team, an ice hockey team, or a rugby team, because it just doesn't work. That's dictating through terrorism.
Yeah, and to continue from that point, I'm actually stealing this from a YouTube channel whose name I can't remember at the moment, but the channel made a good point that Whiplash presents music and jazz playing not as jazz playing, but as a sports movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Whiplash is a sports movie that masquerades itself as a movie about jazz.
Yeah.
And I actually quite strongly side with that notion, looking at how or what Fletcher actually is demanding from his pupils here. Pretty much the only requisite that Fletcher is giving out to the drummers is that they have to play fast. It's constantly, what is the one thing that Fletcher is griping about throughout the film? It's the fucking tempo. It's always the tempo.
Yeah.
It's not
tempo.
fast enough. Your hands ain't bleeding enough.
Yeah.
There's not enough blisters and not enough blood on this symbol.
Yeah, well, on that score, just interjecting it, on that score, any conductor of a band that is happy that his drummer's hands are bleeding, get out. Get out. Just leave. You are not welcome in front of this band that is trying to create, as I said before, the sound from the speakers.
Yeah, that part is of course kind of extreme in the movie and just trying to make it more cinematic and entertaining. But
yeah, and it's irrelevant.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I shit you not. I can remember, Christ, it must be 7 or 8 years ago, and I'd been playing my guitar so hard throughout the day, and I'd had no water, and I split my fingertip wide open. I could see the bone. Now, instead of stopping and letting it heal, I used super glue to put it back together again.
Oof.
And then I carried on playing.
Yeah.
Now, that's an extreme example, but to use the context of your drummer's hand bleeding in that film, firstly, if his hands are bleeding, he can't hold the sticks.
Mm-hmm.
They're slipping out of his hands because there's liquid in between his hand and the sticks. So there's no chance of him being able to finish what he's doing.
Yeah, as is evident in the second competition scene where Miles comes into sits behind the drums after being in a bloody car accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I know the likes of John Bonham. He'd have done that. Def Leppard drummer. He'd have gotten there. Just smashed the kit. He ended up playing with his hands most of the time, not even using sticks.
Yeah, when it comes to Fletcher trying to get the speed out of the drummers, it's just part of his bullying in the movie. Nothing more, nothing less. Just trying to bully out the skill somehow.
As well, I'll reiterate the point on that, is the fact that the recorded piece of music that they've notated, so they have the notes for every single note that was played during that, it was taken from a recording of a band that could never repeat the music again. Mm-hmm. It was all off the cuff.
But isn't there something to be said about the reaching proficiency and these kind of old-fashioned tactics, maybe minus the extreme and the physical abuse and maybe abuse in general? But when you reach a certain amount of proficiency in whatever you do, if it's Chinese or drumming, there are very few of those who pass that barrier from just okay level to some kind of proficiency or greatness. And so to get there, it's not going to be fun per se. So you need a kind of way of pain. And that way of pain might be your instructor, not in the level of Fletcher, but something a bit extreme.
Right. I can give an example of this as of today. Now, I do some volunteer work over. We have an acre of land that we're farming so that the people, anybody who has nothing, can have food. So we're growing potatoes, we're growing leeks, we're growing onions, we're growing lots of different foods on the land, and then we give it to people who have nothing. All right. So nice. we have it is. We have a hut there where we cook up some food afterwards. So we sat down for some food. Now this young lad comes in each week, and he has Down syndrome. Now, he was grinning like a Cheshire cat when he saw me sat there. He rushed back out and he brought in his new guitar. He bought himself he'd been given a guitar earlier today by his grandmother. He comes in and he sits down, and I play a bit. It's a nice little guitar, it's got a really nice sound to it for something and it is only a cheap guitar, but it's a really nice sounding guitar. And he can't play chords yet. He can't play guitar yet. So I just told him straight, every moment that you put into it, you will receive back. So the more you put into it, the more you will receive from it. So in what you've just said about how there is an element of the bullying, there is an element of the fierceness, etc., of the teacher to the student, it's the mistake that people make, because that isn't nurturing the talent. That isn't inviting the student to play more, to learn more. It's just telling the student that they're not doing it well enough for their expectations, for the teacher's expectations.
Let's make it clear, though, that Damien Chazelle, in his own words, says that he didn't mean this movie to be like a win at the end of the movie. It was supposed to be something a bit sick and twisted, and what has this Fletcher instructor made Andy to become? And
Sure.
Yeah, that out of the way. But
I mean, as a film, I thought it was a great film. It's a very good film. Not a great film, but it's a good film.
Okay.
But it doesn't depict a quality style of teaching from the person who was there to teach.
But the perverse thing is that it's working, right? In Andrew's case,
not.
It's not.
He comes through the barrier and becomes the great drummer that he always wanted to be.
No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't. He already is the great drummer that he always wanted to be. All he does at the end of that is show the teacher that's been bullying him that he can do what the teacher wants.
Okay,
yeah.
Fair, could be seen in that way. But still, the thing about being master of your craft in anything, that requires abandoning virtually everything else in your life, and that's what you see at the end of the film.
To put that into context, then, if you get that same kid who's drumming in that film and ask him to play Cherub Rock by the Smashing Pumpkins, ask him to play, I don't know, Give It Away by the Chili Peppers, I guarantee he won't be able to do the same without weeks of practice. And yet those drum beats are far simpler than the stuff that he's playing on stage, because he has been honed into that one style. And I'm not saying, there's a phrase in English called jack of all trades, master of none. Now, don't get me wrong, this kid would be the master of his jazz art. Okay, fine, fantastic. But in that same instance, he's not creating anything. He is only replicating what has already been.
Okay, but look at most of the greats of the entire history of humankind, and these are always some kind of what you would describe maybe as freaks, the people who just isolate themselves from the rest of the environment and just dedicate all of their living moments to learning that and mastering that craft. That's what they do.
In fact, surprisingly few of them actually ever pull that stunt.
Yeah,
most of the greats that we look up on, it of course depends on what is the field you are looking for your greats. Are we now talking about, sloppy disgusting film podcasters, or are we talking about jazz musicians? Are we talking about painters? Are we talking about actors? Well, of course, may depend kind of from scene to scene, but in most cases, the greats didn't have to sacrifice everything in the altar of their art.
No, they chose to sacrifice their lives for their art.
Most of the greats actually managed to have family lives, managed to have friends, managed to have other things in their lives than just their bloody art. Take J.K. Simmons, for example, who won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for his role as Fletcher here.
Best unsupportive actor.
Didn't sacrifice everything in the art of acting. Has a family life, has friends.
Yeah, no, but I think there are a fair share of those who also need that complete solitude and isolation. Like, you have to shut out every other noise, including your girlfriend's noise. So greatness is not for everybody, I think, what this film is sharing with me. And greatness is not necessarily even something you should strive for, because it takes too much of your time and your responsibilities as an adult person. You have to take care of others as well.
Your second point I would agree with. The first point where you said greatness isn't for everybody. Well, the bottom line with that is that's apathetic. simply because nobody knows if they're going to be great or not. And it requires all the effort to find out if you are.
Well, it's kind of if you have.
It's a juxtaposition, I know that,
But to really master something, I think it takes that special effort, which might require some sacrifices.
Of course. But that's down to the person. That's all down to the person who is attempting to achieve it. They may achieve it, they may not, but it's down to them to make that choice for themselves. And the point in this is, or the point I'm trying to make in this is, where you have a drummer and beyond a doubt, he's exceptional. You know, he is or at least the character in this is an exceptional drummer. And yet, I bring in the likes, like I said, Danny Carey. You have, I have a friend of mine who is far and away the best drummer I have ever heard in my life. And right now, all he does is shift furniture. You know, he moves people from one house to another. He plays drums about once a week at home, on his own, alone, and doesn't play to the public. So nobody would even know that he's great, even though his skill set is beyond belief.
Yeah, but I don't think it takes anything away from the film's part of its point that some people, at least, they require this kind of a succumb to madness so that they can be great according to them, or at least get the validation from an instructor, whatever the case. But there are those people, and then there are those people who are virtuosos from day one.
Sure, but on that score, let me ask you this: what do you define as a successful musician?
A successful musician is someone who is technically able to play and entertain people and get that validation from the audience, I would say.
Why do they need the audience to validate them?
Not necessarily.
They're either good or they're not. They either have a skill set or they don't.
Sure, but
I mean,
as far as
remember,
do you want to continue as a drummer without validation? Probably not.
But then I'll bring in my friend Alex, who's an exceptional drummer, possibly the best I've ever heard in my life, and he doesn't play to an audience. He might pick up his drumsticks once a week, but he spends his days moving other people's furniture for them.
Yeah.
You see? But he is a successful drummer simply because he is very good at playing the drums. Doesn't need anybody else to tell him that. He knows he can play the drums.
Fair, true.
Yeah. So the audience validation. The one thing I found is that most people, I'm not saying you guys, but the majority of people would class success as having a lot of money in the bank account. I'll reference the Czech cellist who, at 86 years old, was asked under interview, You've played all over the world. You've played with this orchestra, that orchestra, that orchestra, that orchestra. You are known as one of the greatest cellists ever played. So why do you still practice? And his answer was this: because I believe I'm making progress.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, a great musician, a master musician, isn't somebody who can do everything, whatever. It's one that continues to learn.
Yeah, as in any craft.
Yeah, well, not any craft, but their chosen field, their chosen specific, i.e. whether it's the cello, whether it's the recorder, whether it's the violins, whether it's I don't know, whichever instrument it is, their chosen instrument. For me, it's the willingness to continue learning.
Yeah, there's no goal line.
Yeah, because learning is infinite.
So in terms of just the movie itself, not so much the music side of things. So any general thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was a wonderful film. I do. I really do. I think there's a lot of flaws to it. I think there are things that should have been done differently. And there are things that made me quite angry in it. But overall, it's an acceptable film.
I would say that in many ways it's an exceptionally fine film, how it's constructed. In the first 4 minutes, we get the main characters introduced. We get their motivation, their character. It's all there, done, bam, and then we get to all the specifics and all the other supporting characters. So
it's not too difficult to do when there's a cast of 5.
Yeah, an absolutely fine cast of characters and actors there, and extremely fine cutting. It's got like a tempo. It's hard to stop watching this movie. It just keeps on going. Henrik.
I'm not going to agree with you on that one, but yeah.
All right. Henrik, how was it for you technically?
Technically, I think it's a good, if not even a great film. My problems with the movie are not on technical levels. My problems with the film are more with what the film might be saying and with the main question that I felt the film was trying to ask.
I think it's saying whatever you wanted to be saying. The Damien Chazelle was looking for something, I guess, in between. That this is a guy who is a bit fucked up by the end, and this is not exactly what you should aim for. Then there are the people in the audience who went to watch this and were like, oh yeah, I agree with this 100%. You should be, the whole the spare the rod, spoil the child is true. So which is validated by the contents of the film, which is not what I believe.
What Damien Chazelle was trying to do, I guess, was to find some type of a 10 to 20 years too late justification for his own experiences in the hands of his own music teacher, who, well, Damien himself credits on turning him into a good musician, also might turn him into a guy who apparently hasn't played any music for the past, 20, 30 years? Don't you exactly remember when Chazelle was supposed to have this experience in the hands of his own music tutor, but, well, he didn't turn out into a bloody musician, that's damn sure, seeing how his today's forte is to be a director.
Yeah, extremely successful one, now it seems. Jumping right into science fiction in Hollywood and starring Brad Pitt.
Wasn't that film, if I remember correctly, wasn't...
Brad Pitt in Babylon. Damien Chazelle.
Okay. I heard that got kind of a lukewarm reception.
Yeah, I'll say that
so.
I haven't seen any of the other films that the guy has directed. I have seen 5 minutes of La La Land and I turned it off. But that's for some other folks out there, I believe, that kind of movies.
Master of his craft, so to say.
Yep. How was it for you?
I haven't seen La La Land.
Okay.
Haven't seen anything else except Whiplash. But seeing how you managed to take La La Land for 5 minutes and then turn it off, and La La Land still, as far as I've understood, it's a film about some type of a reaching out for Hollywood success, from rags to riches story, which always nets you the token net positives in Hollywood circles. Well, if you couldn't stomach the movie more than 5 minutes, I'm saying that if I would try to watch it, it wouldn't be that great experience for me either.
Well, I don't know. I'm just not a musical movie guy. You may be more.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah, it's that musical one, isn't it? Yeah. I know. Yeah, I've actively chosen not to watch that.
It's really hard to get like a musical which doesn't make you hate all the actors. Like something that would be more natural from scene to scene, and maybe something that doesn't break off the music. It should be like a continuous music, perhaps.
It's a musical. It's not going to do anything for me.
Okay, coming from a musician.
Yeah, the only musical worth watching, worth paying attention to, is the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
All right.
Tell me you've seen. You cannot be all movies and all that if you haven't seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, of course not.
I honestly can't tell you if I have.
A film is an institution. Never actually been into any of the like official screenings or the screenings of the film where you have all the where you would have the audience sing along the songs and throwing trash at the screen or and other that stuff. Haven't had that experience myself yet. Of course, me being stuck in Finland, where we are extremely conservative in our behavior, kind of affects that. We would never have that outlandish taking part with the film experience here. But yeah. Other than that, I have seen it, of course.
The bottom line is, it's Tim Curry in fishnet stockings and what kind of, is it a leather bodice or something, isn't it? And then you got
Yeah.
Meatloaf up on stage doing a couple of tracks off of his first album as well. Yeah, it's as a musical, that's a musical.
Should we get to the quickies? Henrik, ready?
Yep.
Yeah, let's go.
Diddly-ding.
The performance pedestal or raise and praise or barbecue one actor were needed. Who was your like or don't like actor here, in other words? Let's go with J.K. Simmons. Wonderful performance, obviously. Everyone is in top form, though.
I disagree. I don't think J.K. Simmons did a very good job of being the person. Not that he was the wrong person for the job. I just don't think he did a very good job of it.
I think you're just out of tempo, Pat.
Yeah, I'm running 6-8 time.
Okay, that's a surprising take, because also my favorite performance in the film was J.K. Simmons.
All right.
I'm actually like, if I can trouble you a bit more, Pat.
Like I said, I think he's a very good actor.
Yeah, but he's a very good actor. But what didn't click with you?
Oh, no, I think, like I said, he's a very good actor. There's no question about that. He's very versatile across the board. In the majority of films he does, I think he's done a very good job. I just don't think he was correct for this role.
Wow.
I
Okay.
think with it, not so much any other actor, but because he is the big, quite stocky, bald-headed, quite muscular figure on it, it brought the sports scenario into it.
Yeah, granted.
That's the part that I don't think worked to have him as that character. I think somebody else, I'm not sure who, but somebody else could have played the role and achieved a better result, and also a better result overall by removing that sports scenario from it.
Good point.
What worked? What worked in the film for you?
For me, when you say for you, there's two people listening. What worked for me? The play button.
All right.
No, I think what worked for me was that it showed the arrogance and pretentiousness of the white man in the jazz world. It showed it for what it is, because I've seen jazz musicians, classically trained jazz musicians in the cities around me. Like, there's a lot of the music schools around here, and they do drum it. I've also seen it in Belgium, I've seen it in France, and I've also seen it in Italy, where it is drummed into the students, and they're bullied, and they're crying. To put it bluntly, these young adults are left crying because of the brutality of how they're being spoken to. And all it's down to is the arrogance and the pretentiousness of the person dictating to them how and what should be played. So for that respect, I thought that film portrayed it very well.
I'm just gonna be the heretic of the show tonight and just go with the more mainstream view, I guess, on the movie, because I liked it quite a bit, I can say already. What worked for me was, the structure, as said, the story, the goddamn pacing was just really. I never go anywhere when I'm watching this film. I'm just kind of glued to it, from the cinematography to the cutting to the
Sure.
just the whole ballet and the performances.
Because that's the angle you look at it from.
Yeah,
I look at it as a musician.
absolutely. So from that perspective, all what I said is kind of obvious. So let's just move on from that. Henrik, did you have anything to add?
I'm pretty much for the same reasons as you, Karri. Not being a musician and coming into this film from completely different point of view, I do agree with you. The thing that I liked about Whiplash was that I think it's technically good, if not even great.
Yeah.
It's a technically really good movie. I like the editing, I like the color correction that they had given to the film, the golden hue that was there. I liked the performances, I liked how the story went on, it kept me glued. Those are all technical aspects, and those I like.
Yeah. No, I agree with that as well.
Now, could it be that we could, Henrik, somehow make you see the film in a way that the movie would more click to you would you find some kind of a different perspective on looking at the end of the film, perhaps? What happens at the end of the film, after the film? Something.
I would say no, because that's kind of my answer to the next quickie question. What didn't work?
Okay, what didn't work, Henrik?
To me, it's the message, or the message that I perceived that the film was trying to form. And that's what comes into the ending. That's what comes into the choice that Miles makes when he ditches his girlfriend. To me, that's all part of the film trying to form a message. And I really just did not side with it. And because of that, I see it as quite impossible for me to ever find a point of view or perception where I could, for example, look at the ending of the film and the ending would really click with me.
I think this is more like what worked again, but I will just add that, well, Giselle may have his Giselle perspective on what he was trying to accomplish, which is like descent to madness, more of that than anything else. Descent into madness, and from my perspective, when you have at the end, you have the close-ups to the father who is looking at his son. He's looking at him apparently in horror of what he has become. And in my perspective, it's somewhere dangling on the line there. It's a little bit of that horror, yeah, probably, because it was what they intended. When I was watching this film, before knowing about the intention, I didn't get that image. I got the image of a father who was extremely proud, and that the ending was all about validation from Fletcher, validation eventually from the audience, validation from the father. But yeah, sure, okay, father has a moment of realization of horror that this is not the same son that I had before. Look at where this has taken my son.
Yeah,
but also some admiration.
I also had a similar experience. When I first watched the film, I took that the ending was to show us how Miles kind of wins the situation. How it's supposed to be kind of a happy ending. Miles becomes the great musician that he's always wanted to be, and he gets the admiration from Fletcher and the audience. And when it came to the point of view or the idea that the father is not looking at Miles in awe, but instead in horror, that's something that I only got from
Giselle.
Yeah, interviews. And even those bloody interviews are kind of contradicting with each other. Because I also found interviews where he states that, that was supposed to be some type of a success. That in that moment, Miles turns into a great musician and he becomes what he's always wanted to be.
Yeah.
And with that, you would think that the whole world would just be in awe of him. So I do think that the director at times, he's not outright contradicting himself in the statements of what happens, for example, at the end of the film. But he dangles extremely close to contradicting himself.
Yeah, I think it's intentionally a little bit up to your interpretation type of ending. But it's fair what you say that if you take it like that the message of the film is more aching to this is what you should do to achieve greatness. Fair, that's how much of the audience also took it. But there you go.
Sure, but at that same point, though, to achieve greatness requires practice. Like I said to my friend Nick, the boy with Down syndrome today, the more you put in, the more you will receive from it.
Mm.
So if you buy any musical instrument and you go 10 minutes a day forever, and you'll be playing 10 minutes a day, but you'll only achieve 10 minutes a day's worth of being able to play. Whereas you put in 10 hours a day, and you get so much more back.
Do you believe that there is a magic line in every skill that if you put 10,000 hours to it, you will somehow become fluent?
Well, 10,000 is the magic number.
Yeah, that's what they say.
And it really is. It's the magic number. You put 10,000 hours into anything, and you will be able to do it without even thinking about it.
Yeah. Oh, coming back to what didn't work. for me, what Henrik says that it's a problem with the messaging of the movie. For me, it's kind of a bonus to keep it kind of in the dark. You draw your own conclusion.
How so? Well, yeah. I mean, everything's subjective anyway in it because it's a film. It's written by somebody else. It's directed by another person. So even between those two aspects, it's subjective.
Yeah, and the subjectivity, Pat, is what makes this a very artsy movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's no City of God, but it is an artsy movie.
Well, describe the film in one word. I'll go first. I should have thought of something musical for this, but I'll just go with something sporty. I think it fits in the end after all. Slam dunk.
Okay.
From my end, it's tempo.
I'll go with conflated.
All right. And something where we're just gonna be ambushing Pat tonight. Unfortunately, I didn't send you the list of these questions in advance, but hey, this can be whatever you want. So complete the sentence. You really know you're watching Whiplash when ... And I'll give you the first go. You really know you're watching Whiplash when your smug smile is quenched by an unhinged lunatic who screams at the top of his air ducts, "What a miserable, useless, unsalted pretzel you are." And he'd be right.
Okay, to give Pat more time, I go next. You really know you're watching Whiplash when Starbucks takes an artist and turns him into a dictaphone.
Yeah. You really know you're watching Whiplash when you have to Google every musical reference on it.
Oh, really?
That
Well,
actually is absolutely true, and I have a point to make about that. I will save it for would you recommend the film section of the quickies, but I have actually a point to make about, Googling the musical references in this film.
yeah. I mean, look, the bottom line is, average. I'm talking from an average person's point of view.
Yeah.
You show this movie to a musician and they understand. They if they don't know the names, they know where the references are coming from, or at least the era the references are coming from. If you know nothing about music and its construct, you need to Google everything in it just to have an understanding of what's occurring.
For me, it was more like a background noise, and I was like, okay, Pat is gonna clear anything up if needed.
And mostly that works, but unless you actually know some of the musical history, or you do your own Googling after the film, there is actually I'm looking at the fucking Charlie Baker story here. There's a great
good reference, that.
possibility that you will actually misunderstood what is being said.
Yes. Charlie Parker's one, but even he's young in comparison to who they should be referencing. Because remember, jazz, it's early 1900s. Jimmy Chamberlin of the Smashing Pumpkins. Now that guy, he's a grade 8, classically trained jazz drummer, playing for one of the rock bands in the world. Who's the guy that they reference in the film that they want him to be like?
Joe Jones.
Yeah. Any of those, but even those guys, 'cause the guys they're referencing in that film are from like the 60s, the 50s and 60s. So go back another 50 years, and you reach the musicians who created the drum beats that these guys are emulating in the 60s. And now we're in 2020, or when was filmed?
2014.
2014. So this is another 50 years later, and these guys are now trying to emulate the guys that were emulating the guys before.
Yep.
And it's look, for me, I appreciate the film. I think it's a good film. I won't call it a great film because I don't think it is a great film. I think it's a good film. It's been well written. It's been well produced. The screenplay on it is lovely. It's got nice color tones, like you say, and the ambiguity. Yes, that was a beautiful touch to it all. As a film, it's a good film, but for the subject of the film, I don't think they did a very good job of portraying it.
So you're saying that this film is not your tempo?
Oh, well, let me put it like this. I watched it, and I thought then, that's a good film. I like what they've done there. Whereas with Apocalypto, I stood up in the cinema and I said, I want the last 2.5 hours of my life back, please.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oof.
So.
All right, guys. Would you ever rewatch the film? I will go and start with. Yeah, sure. That this is not a really question I would even ask myself. Sure, I've watched it like 5 times already now at this point.
Yeah. Okay. If it were on and I walked into somebody's house and it were on the screen, I wouldn't request it turned off. However, it's not going to be in my go-to list of movies to see.
Henrik.
I'm kind of on the same note with Pat here. I might someday even put it on myself.
Yeah.
Take out the DVD and put it on player and press play. Most likely because of J.K. Simmons' performance here. So I'm going to answer yes, but most likely I'm not gonna watch it for 5 times.
And then let's go for the last one. Would you recommend Whiplash?
I would recommend The Doors. I wouldn't recommend Whiplash.
Okay, do you care to go more into details?
Yeah, are we talking about the cinema Doors or the actual band Doors?
Oh, the film The Doors. I think that's an exceptional film displaying the life of Jim Morrison and the band The Doors, obviously.
As a man who is not a great Doors fan and doesn't really know that much about Doors, I have to side with the film still is really great.
Yeah. Well produced. Oliver Stone, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did an exceptional job with it.
Before he lost his fucking marbles.
Yeah, I personally, I think it was an exceptional portrayal of the film. And the fact that it's actually Val Kilmer doing the vocals is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
He practiced and practiced and practiced to be able to sound like Jim Morrison.
Well, my end, to answer the question, I'm kind of 2 minds about it. Like already mentioned, I do think that technically it's a good film. It's really enjoyable. I really do enjoy J.K. Simmons' performance here, even though I must give it to Pat. He is right when he says that J.K. Simmons perhaps wasn't the correct actor for Fletcher, due to the fact that what his physique brings into this movie. A great performance. Really deserve the Best Supporting Actor Oscar. Good job, J.K., but...
Hang on. He got an Oscar for it.
Yep.
Yep.
Best supporting actor.
Wow. Were there no other movies produced that year?
Okay. Shots fired.
It had a bored man yelling at a kid. It's always gonna win an Oscar.
Yeah.
But technicalities aside, I do think that Whiplash is a bad film about music, and it's a bad film about jazz. The film's notion about musical brilliance is nothing more than just being 2 things. A, to be able to play drums really fast, faster than light, and then also, and B, to play despite the pain you feel. Whenever Miles is playing drums and the film is picturing it like this is the moments that Miles plays really well, Miles is always given exactly the opposite.
Yeah, I agree with that.
None of them has any feeling in it. It's basically a gauntlet to these musicians.
Yeah, because they're replicating, they're not creating.
Yeah, and that's also why I do think that it's a bad film about music.
Yeah, that's so.
Because it kind of shows you that great music is just that you emulate something else.
Yeah.
Some works that somebody has someday done. You replicate exactly the notes. But nobody here is making their own music.
And you can't replicate. Even me, as a musician, don't get me wrong, I can play the same piece of music twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, but it will never sound identical each time.
Yeah, that really pissed me off here, seeing how Whiplash's, the genre of music that it chose was jazz.
Yeah.
Where improvisation And the one-timey nature of the performance is a huge part of that genre. Like, had this been Spice Girls the movie or some synth pop band movie, I could have sided with it. Yeah. You just replicate the previous song and you just hit the notes accordingly. Okay, fine, but no. Whiplash makes the knowing decision to choose jazz.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely.
Which is about improvisation.
Yes. I mean, I agree with everything. While it is, to replicate is a wonderful thing in this respect. And it is, because the people who they're playing to want to hear the music from their youth, for example. They want to be taken back in time. They want the nostalgia of it all. But they're not bringing anything new to the table. And without that progression, nothing new occurs.
Yeah, and my second big problem with Whiplash is that and this is one of the reasons, and this is the reason why I find it hard to actually recommend Whiplash to others. Because from the film, I got the notion that the film feels that it's really asking a tough, hard question. When it asks you, is bullying and hazing and is Fletchers of the world, should we accept them if they provide results? And I got the feeling that the film really believes in itself, that it now is somehow asking a hard, tough, difficult, philosophical question. Should we make the sacrifices in order to get the results? And seeing the audience reactions or reading them, in preparation to this episode, I also took that a lot of people who originally went and saw Whiplash felt that, yeah, that's the question that the film is asking. It's a really difficult question. Perhaps we should actually consider the Fletcher's point of view here. And the answer to all of those is just plain and fucking no.
Yeah, I agree.
No. The question is not smart. It's
the bottom line is the man's a failure.
Yeah, Fletcher is not a great teacher. He barely...
Not a great musician either.
He's not even a teacher.
No.
Yeah.
He's not a great musician. He's not a great teacher. But he's demanding it from other people who he can't teach.
Yeah. And there is no question, should we accept the Fletchers of the world in order to get results? Because we don't get results from Fletchers.
Yeah. I told you earlier what my response to be should I be in that situation, and it really would be if I have a chair thrown at me, I put whoever threw its head through the wall. Done. They don't throw a chair at me again.
Yeah, and the reason why it and the moment where it really started just to like grind my gears, and I already promised previously that I get back into this point, was the bloody Charlie Baker story here in the film.
Yeah.
It's repeated 3 times. Once told by Fletcher, 2 times told by Miles. And they all tell it the way that Joe Jones threw the cymbal at Charlie Baker's head.
Yeah.
Almost decapitated him, as they stated here. The way how they tell the story, Charlie Parker was not hitting the notes. And Joe Jones loses his fucking temper and almost kills Charlie Parker with the cymbal.
Yeah.
That's how Whiplash tells the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not true.
Oh, of course it isn't.
It's not true. Fletcher makes it up out of his ass, and the film never actually questions that.
Oh, it's not true?
As far as I was able to actually... Like, this is where post-film watching Googling comes into play. I actually Googled this bloody story.
Okay.
And... as far as I understood, the way how it goes is that Charlie Parker he's playing with a band, but he's freestyling. He's going on his own. He's not playing the same music that the other band is playing, and he kind of misses the notes also. So it's not really even that great, or it's not the best possible. Like if you're freestyling, despite of the other rest of the band, you have to kind of hit a certain level. And Charlie Parker can't quite reach that level, and yet, despite of that, he keeps on freestyling. Goes on for fucking forever. Until eventually Joe Jones takes out the cymbal and throws it at Charlie Parker's feet.
Yeah.
There is no physical danger.
And it just happened to land near his feet.
Yeah. So there is no decapitation. There is no Joe Jones hating Charlie Parker for the act that Charlie Parker is not playing the notes with right tempo, with the right speed, and hitting every note perfectly. No, it was about freestyling. And no, Charlie Parker didn't get off the stage, he didn't cry himself to sleep, and he didn't turn into bird as a result of that.
Yeah.
So the whole fucking... Fletcher justifies his actions with a story that he actually tells, that he blatantly lies about. Fletcher even should know how the story goes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the over-dramatization, the imagination, the overactive imagination of a person that's trying to justify their own actions to reach the goal that person wants because they're unable to achieve it without the aggressive actions that he's portraying.
Yeah. And from there I come into my conclusion that I recommend Whiplash as a technically well-made movie if the audience can actually be and, take everything that Fletcher says and throw it out of the film and not listen to any of that nonsense. But if there is even the tiniest possibility that you will watch Whiplash and start to think about, hey, this movie is really asking an interesting question, and perhaps Fletcher is even right in what he does. In that case, I don't recommend you check out Whiplash.
I think to some degree, there is something to be learned about, like pushing people. It shouldn't be a monster like Fletcher to one direction of teaching. It should be like some kind of a mix of two different teaching styles. Something could be taken from the old world and mixed with the teaching that we have today. Because obviously what we have today is not always something that motivates or makes people study.
But at that same point though, Karri, you have what's been learned, and it's so important, is that while a teacher may teach and a student must learn, or not must learn, but students do learn, the fact is it's changed from a teacher dictating what is and learning how to teach each student individually.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another point here is that basically the balance in demand today, or if you take the old world, like you said, and you compare it to the modern world, the world of today, well, of course the scales are automatically going to be tipped for the old world, because you are looking at tens, hundreds, perhaps even 2,000 years worth of art, of maestros and masters who have managed to make, like, there's a huge time gap from where you can find masterpieces, and then you can look at today's world and say that we don't have as many masterpieces, but that's obviously going to be the fact, because what we have...
I'll have you know, son, we've got Crazy Frog. We had Crazy Frog.
Well... Yeah.
How can you say there's no masters?
Oh, bloody hell, I forgot Crazy Frog.
Freddy got fingered.
Is a better movie than people actually give it credit to.
Yeah.
If you would actually look for a real masterpiece, if you really would want to have a film that is a statement of, your freak who isolates him from everything in order to achieve greatness, what you would get is Freddy Got Fingered.
It's a surrealist masterpiece of the modern age.
And it's just a one film.
Yeah. I'm just gonna jump off on another tangent, but I just gotta get it out of my system. You mentioned Slash, Pat.
Oh, yeah. That was just an example of... go on.
Yeah. I'm not sure how these very technical guitar players, your Bucketheads and Bumblefoots and what have you, I wonder if they had any kind of Fletchers of the world there behind, pulling the strings. But what I gravitate towards, and this may be sacrilegious to you, fine, but as a massive Guns N' Roses fan, I have to say that Slash is part of the picture of Guns N' Roses, no doubt about that.
Of course.
But what I really gravitate towards is also some of the other geniuses that have frequented the band. There's been, of course, Buckethead is more known as a solo artist and prefers to be known as such because of the bad blood that happened there when he left, etc. But I seem to gravitate towards many of these technically extremely talented guitarists. And yeah, there are these people who say that it doesn't have any soul in it. But it's not really on or off. I think there's a lot to be said about Buckethead's music. Also goes to Bumblefoot here. He was in Guns N' Roses from 2001 to 2004. He's like basically a guitar virtuoso, as is. I don't know. You mentioned Tool, so obviously you seem to like also masters of their crafts who are very technical, but they also have soul.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about layers within the music I'm listening to. So, for example, again, I'll reference the Smashing Pumpkins, or even better, I'll reference Nine Inch Nails. The Nine Inch Nails, one of my all-time favorite bands. Absolutely.
Then you love
phenomenal.
Robin Fink. Robin Fink.
To a point. I do have time for it, and I will choose to put it on. But there are things that I also don't like about it. But to go with it, to just come back to the Nine Inch Nails on this one. If you want to look at musical greatness, and when I say musical greatness, I don't mean somebody that the world recognizes, somebody that covers all platforms that all people would listen to, because simply not everybody will listen to the likes of the Nine Inch Nails. But we're talking about Trent Reznor specifically, who, as a 14-year-old boy, was playing trombone for his high school, who then went on to form a mid-80s synth duet, and then went from there to form the Nine Inch Nails, who are still going now after they released their first album in 1987. They still do world tours now to sell out crowds in stadiums.
Right.
That's a big band. That's somebody. That's a band that. Yeah, that's a band who have achieved success, and it's only through the intelligence of the music. There's a couple of tracks that they do where they can't even play them live because they are so technical. There's so much going on in them.
Yeah, and I would be the first guy that I just wanted to say that Slash, to me, doesn't come off as technical in the least. I think he's a very sloppy guitar player, but he has a lot of soul and improvisation.
He is an exceptional blues guitarist. Exceptional blues guitarist.
Not a technical guitarist, right?
No, but you ask him to play funk and he gets lost.
Yeah.
You ask him to play acid jazz and he doesn't know what he's doing. But as a blues guitarist, he is a phenomenon and always has been.
Yeah, he's great. One of the greats.
As a blues guitarist.
Yeah.
And to take a side tangent, also for myself, from the guitarist discussion that you guys were having, don't really know that many guitarists. Most definitely don't know about the backgrounds, but I did once looked up Buckethead myself, and when it came to his teachers, I've understood that Buckethead was trained by people like Paul Gilbert and Johnny Fortune and some elderly man who lived in his neighborhood. And none of those people, as far as I've actually looked into their teaching methods, none of them is a Fletcher tier asshole.
No, of course.
So Buckethead is not a product. Is not a product of a Fletcher.
Yeah.
It's actually a product of a pretty easygoing music teachers and musicians.
Fair enough.
Look, when it comes to educating people on music, I'm of the mind that I will not teach anybody how to play music. What I will do is help them to learn.
Yeah.
And there's a very big difference between the two.
Amen.
Yeah, showing the way and leaving them alone.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, if they have their way that they want to walk, and I'll help them along it. I will help them to walk the path they choose. What I won't do is dictate to them which path they should choose.
All right, dear listener, we have reached a point where we will leave you alone. But just for a moment, we could discuss about Pat Smith's works. So I understood nothing much going on right now musically, but you have a musical background, you have albums out there somewhere. Is there any way to listen to it or to follow you on the interwebs?
I pulled everything from the internet, really, other than my music's online. You can go to any streaming platform, search out Pat Smith, Wander by Starlight, or Pat Smith, No Respect, and you'll find either a single or my first album, and then you can follow the links appropriately to find my discography. There's a couple of albums so far. There's, I think, 3 singles, 2 EPs, or two singles and 3 EPs. I don't remember. Yeah, you can listen, by all means. If you're looking for a Facebook page, don't have one. I pulled that offline. I don't do TikTok. I'm generally not on social media, to be honest. I don't waste my time with it.
I couldn't see you in TikTok like ever.
No. I mean, like, I personally, I have a Facebook page, but that's generally just to tell politicians that they're sociopaths.
Yeah, there are some tracks that, well, I used to listen to a couple of the tracks out there, so I'm sure there's good stuff to be found for our listeners. Music
is what music is. It's each to their own, and it's all subjective.
Amen to that.
May I say one thing? One thing that does gripe me, and it's something that I'll get over, like. But you take Facebook and you've got all these DJs out there and they've got musician, band as their description. I didn't realise being able to count to 4 made me a musician or a band. I wasn't aware of that one.
Have you tried DJing? It's pretty hard, right?
Well, counting to 4 is easy, mate. 1, 2, 3, 4. Look, I just did it.
The timing of things, rhythm of things, mixing them all together into something listenable.
But it's counting to 4. I mean, you can stretch it, and in those 4, you can put 32 beats and call it drum and bass at 180 beats a minute, but it's still only counting to 4.
To actually just side with Pat here, DJing, and I speak from experience because I have seen this happen. DJing is so easy that even a politician can do it.
Yep. There we go. It's playing other people's music. Pressing play and counting to 4 does not make a person a musician.
Uh-huh.
And what about those who do it more manual way, who have actual old school gear, not computers?
No, computers or decks, it's irrelevant. It's still counting to 4 and pressing play and counting to 4. If they play the bass, if they play the drums, if they play the horns, if they play the string section, if they play the guitars, if they play the keys, that's musicianship. But pressing play and counting to 4, that's not a band, and it's stretching the limits of being a musician to the ultimate, in my opinion. And I'm sure I know that it's not only my opinion either.
Wait, did you just Fletcher right there? Because I've been dreaming of becoming some level of DJ at some point.
Yeah, sure. And by all means do it. But recognize that being a disc jockey is not being a musician.
You're a disc jockey. Got it.
You're a disc jockey. You play other people's music and you mix other people's music together by pressing play and counting to 4.
So in order to be a musician, you would have to also play guitar while you are DJing. Hey,
not necessarily a guitar.
Interesting.
Just to be able to play any musical instrument. You can sit there with a triangle and just go ding, 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 ding. There, I just counted to 4 again. But I'm making a sound on an instrument. Yeah, it's just a gripe of mine. It does my head in.
All right. Hey.
Anyway, rant over. Sorry about that.
No. This was fun. Throwing the ball to our listeners. Would you want to be instructed by Fletcher? Come and comment on our Facebook and X and Instagram and other socialistic medias out there. You can also leave us basic feedback via email. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you think this content was really valuable, you can also give us a coin or a few on our Patreon page. Henrik, what's going to happen in our next episode?
He's going to learn how to count to 4.
Well, could be among things, but we're definitely gonna have a guest to talk about the Czech film, actually Czechoslovakian film, Ucho, the ear, UCHO. Thank you for tuning in. See you in the next one.
Until then.
Welcome.
And as you can hear, we're kind of all under the weather, so sorry about the audio quality problems this week. And that's
Are we still recording?
we're still recording.
He's strict, but he's fair. Blah, 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 blah. Strict, but he's fair. Blah, 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 blah. And blah, 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 blah.